Hey guys. This is Yuruzi and I bring to you part 3 of What If Naruto Have Artemis Inside His Soul. When her fight with Atlas is interrupted by Luke using the power of Kronos, Artemis, goddess of the hunt and moon, finds herself in the apartment of a familiar whiskered blonde. Low on power, badly hurt, and possibly being hunted, the huntress decides to hide inside the most unlikeliest of places, Naruto's soul. Only one problem, she isn't alone in there. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. This part will cover chapters 11 to 13. Let's start. Chapter 11. Last time. Peachy, Naruto said tiredly as he stayed sprawled out across the ground. Good, then you can deal with the thing that just slithered onto your chest. Say what now? Naruto mumbled as he lifted his head up. And promptly had his jaw fall straight back down as he saw, am I hallucinating or is there a chibi snake lady on my chest? And now. Turns out he wasn't hallucinating. It had been a day since the turtle monster attacked Omocha, and Naruto could be found lying on a luxurious king-sized bed with a bored expression on his face. Several bandages covered his bare torso, his entire right arm, and a good portion of his head. The chibi snake lady, or Lamia as Artemis said her kind was called, was still on his chest. She was roughly 1.5 feet long/tall, with 2/3 of her body consisting of a black and yellow snake tail that ended at the hips. Not only that, but a pair of small gray wings attached to her shoulder blades, each one about an inch big and covered in soft down feathers. Past that, she looked almost entirely human with soft peach skin, long black hair that reached a few centimeters past her shoulders, and bright amber eyes. She looked to be about 7 to 8 years old with slightly chubby cheeks and somewhat pudgy physique, only made more apparent with the cute blue dress she was wearing. She was currently sitting just above where his heart was, her tail curled up messily around her as she watched a cartoon on the TV in front of the bed. Ever since she'd first revealed herself, the tiny snake girl spent most of her time in that spot, with the only exceptions being to go to the bathroom, eating, when he moved, or if someone moved her. Like when his comrades had first found him after he slew Bowser. To say it was an awkward first meeting would be an understatement. The day before. I can't believe Naruto took that thing down by himself, Ino muttered as she kept glancing at the mutated turtle's corpse. It had only been 5 minutes since its death, and yet it was somehow already badly decayed as its rotting flesh started falling apart. I saw it with my own eyes, yet I still can't believe it. She knew Naruto was much more skilled than she'd given him credit for before graduation, but seriously. How did he go barely win a spar in class to toppling giant 100-foot monsters in just a few months? I know what you mean, Guy-sensei and Asuma-san barely even scratched it. Tenten said as helped the gossip queen move some rubble that they'd seen a glimpse of orange under, only to groan when it was just a broken store sign. She was having just as much difficulty understanding how Naruto managed something that both their senseis couldn't. However, unlike Ino, whose confusion was towards Naruto's skills, her disbelieving thoughts were focused on the boy's condition. He was still recovering from head injury and third-degree burns when they'd separated after all. He probably just got lucky is all, Niji said with a scoff as he landed beside them with his usual stoic expression on his face. There is no other explanation for one destined to failure, Lee. Niji, this is so not the time for your fate crap, Tenten cut him off, stunning the pale-eyed boy briefly. I can normally stand it when we're training and such, but right now we are in the middle of a mission. Not only that, but we just got attacked by a giant fire-breathing turtle and now a squad mate is MIA, possibly Kia. So, if you'd please, shut up and keep looking or I swear I'll find out exactly how many of my weapons I can fit up your ass. Caught off guard by his teammates' actions, Niji instinctually backed up a few steps before catching himself. Shaking his head slightly, he quickly recomposed himself and offered back a bland expression. Fine, whatever, he said emotionlessly while walking off to look around Bowser's left leg. Watching him leave with a raised eyebrow, Ino turned back to Tenten and asked, is he always so pessimistic? If by pessimistic you mean complete ass, then yes, he is. Tenten huffed angrily while going the exact opposite direction with the blonde girl in tow. Even in the academy, it was always fate this and destiny that. I can't believe I used to have a crush on him. Seriously, you had the hots for him? Ino asked curiously, getting a short nod in response. What did you even see in him? It was just a typical schoolgirl crush. He was the best in class, looked cute, had that high and mighty attitude of his that made him seem cool. Tenten said, rolling her eyes as she listed off her reasoning for liking Niji while making sure to pay attention to her surroundings for any sign of Naruto. Once I started spending more time with him as a teammate and had to deal with his cool attitude all day, however, his appeal quickly dried up. Oh, I guess that makes sense, Ino said with a nod as a look of contemplation appeared on her face. That sounds a lot like why I like SAS-. Naruto. Her thoughts were cut off by Tenten's shout as the bun-haired girl shot off ahead. Following the direction the girl went, Ino's eyes widened as she saw the missing whiskered blonde lying on the ground not far from Bowser's head, large scratches covering his body and his broken blood-soaked bow lying next to him. She started to rush to his side as well, but was stopped halfway there when a hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder, stopping her on the spot. EMPH. Another hand clapped over her mouth, muffling the startled cry that escaped her lips. Eyes snapping towards the owner of the hands, Ino's surprise swiftly turned to confusion as she found that it was none other than Asuma who stopping her. Guy stood a few feet away holding an equally confused Tenten with Lee and Choji behind him. Removing the hand from her shoulder, he raised it up to his lips and made a shushing motion before pointing to Naruto. Getting the hint, Ino kept quiet as she turned back to the down-whiskered blonde, her eyes bugging out of their sockets as she finally noticed his little hitchhiker staring back at her with a tilted head. What the hell is that thing? She whisper-yelled after pulling the hand off her face. Most likely another escaped experiment. Asuma whispered back, all of them having been informed earlier by Tenten about the lab that she and Naruto had stumbled upon. Speaking of which, Tenten, didn't you say you two had taken one? Yeah, an egg, but it was destroyed when that thing first attacked us. The weapons girl said once Guy let her go, gesturing towards Bowser's head as she spoke. At least, I thought it had been. Well, now we know better. Asuma sighed while rubbing his beard in thought. So what do we do, sensei? Choji asked as he nervously chomped on a bag of chips. I don't know. Hey, not to rush anyone or something, but could you guys stop whispering crap to and help me? I'm bleeding out here and I just lost feeling in my legs. Naruto groaned out as he slowly lifted his head up to glare at the whispering group. Sorry, Naruto, but we can't risk getting close until we know if that thing on your chest is dangerous to either you or us. Asuma called out. Now don't move, I've dealt with snakes before and they don't like sudden movement. How the hell could she be dangerous? Naruto asked dully as he sat up as best he could despite everyone quietly yelling at him not to, and gently grabbed the snake girl around the waist with his good hand. I mean, look at her, she's so tiny and doesn't even have teeth. Much to everyone else's surprise, the Lamia did absolutely nothing in response to the manhandling other than look at the whiskered blonde curiously with a soft hum and curl her tail around his forearm. After waiting a few more moments and still not seeing any hostility, Asuma gradually approached his downed student. Kneeling beside the bleeding blonde, he reached out and cautiously reached out for the snake girl. Grabbing her by the scruff of the neck like one would a venomous serpent, Asuma gently prized her out of Naruto's grasp, once again receiving no reaction other than her tail curling around his arm once it came free and another hum. Back to the present. The cause for her behavior would later be revealed after the smoker went through the files that Tenten had sealed up. As it turned out, the Lamia, that Naruto had named T-Sho, soft singer, due to her humming, had been genetically engineered to be extremely docile and submissive in order to be the perfect test subject. A task made rather easy since the DNA used in Taisho's creation, other than human of course, were that of a garter snake and a pigeon. With everything pointing to the little Lamia being harmless, Asuma and Guy made the decision to give her the benefit of the doubt and let her stay with Naruto, whom she'd apparently imprinted on as her parent due to her avian DNA. This choice was rather well received by the rest of the genin, with Ino and Tenten finding little T-Sho to be quite adorable. The gossip queen of the duo was even the one who refitted the dress Tisho was wearing from a doll. Choji helped prepare food she could eat since she truly didn't have any teeth yet, though they did look to be growing. Thankfully, other than a preference for slightly undercooked meat, her diet was roughly the same as a human. Lee had been his usual enthusiastic self, and happily welcomed her amongst their group. Niji just didn't care, enough said. And now we're back to Naruto laying in bed, recovering from the plethora of injuries he'd gotten from, as Asuma put it, his absolutely craziest and stupidest stunt he'd ever pulled. The luxuriousness of his room was because he was currently inside one of the royal suites of Omocha's finest inn, the Golden Truffle, courtesy of Princess Momo herself, who was staying there as well until her castle was rebuilt. However, no matter how nice the accommodations were, they did little to stop Naruto's rapidly mounting boredom. Not even the TV helped, since all that was playing were educational cartoons for Tisho, since she was only a day old and had a lot to learn. Of course, even if he could do anything, the whiskered blonde wasn't sure he'd want to, as the loss of his bow was still hitting him hard. Glancing over at a corner, his chest clenched slightly as he once again saw the broken weapon laying across a desk, the blood and viscera cleaned off, but the damage still clear as day. His teammates, and Team 9-Niji, had given him their condolences for its destruction and had even offered to help him get a new one, but it was sadly clear that none of them truly understood how much his bow truly meant to him. Not even Tenten, as while she cared for her weapons, her style of fighting often led to them breaking on a regular basis. It wasn't just his primary weapon, it was the proof of his success under Artemis's instruction. The first thing she had him do before teaching him was make that bow, something that had taken weeks of hard work and multiple failed attempts. The tedious process of finding the right wood for the body of the bow, debarking, treating, carving, and finally stringing had left Naruto on the brink of total frustration many times before he finally got it right. It was from that bow that he'd fired his first shot, which still brought him and Artemis laughs, gotten his first bullseye, ended up becoming friends with Hinata, and passed the true genin exam. It was such an integral piece of who he was now that losing it was like killing a part of himself. That was why he never even named it. It was as pointless to him as giving a name to his arm or leg. The worst part, though, was no matter how much he wanted to hold all the blame towards Bowser, Naruto knew that it was just as much his fault due to his reckless actions. Artemis did what she could to support him, being one of the two people, the other being Asuma, who could really sympathize with him as she held her own bow in a similar regard, hence why she refused to even let him touch it, unlike the dancing lunar blades. Unfortunately, she'd never been particularly good at emotional support. Ever since the incident with Orion so many years ago, Artemis had always kept herself from getting too attached to others. This even included her own hunters, whom she'd instead taught to rely on each other for such things. Artemis would have done the same here, but the problem was that was the physical link to Naruto's soul created by the chains binding her. Because of this, she felt his every emotion, heard his every thought, spent every second of every day with him. There was literally no way she couldn't become attached. However, despite her inexperience in the field, Naruto greatly appreciated her attempts and had hugged her inside his mindscape as thanks, then promptly promised not to tell anyone on her insistence, aka threats of unending pain. "Okay, that's it. I'm going for a walk," Naruto said, lifting Tisho off his chest as he sat up and placing her on a nearby pillow, having reached a limit to how long he could sit around doing nothing. "As long as it's only a walk," Artemis told him strictly, getting the blonde to grumble quietly but nod in agreement. Yeah, Tisho, stay here, I'll be back in a bit," he said while scooching to the edge of the bed and standing up with a small hiss. I hope that means she understood," Naruto muttered, his eyes flickering to the Lamia as she continued to stare at the TV before grabbing his jacket from a nearby chair and walking out of the room with a slight limp. Crossing through the equally posh and thankfully empty living room, he headed straight for the front door. Just as he was reaching for the doorknob, though, Naruto jumped in surprise as loud knocking echoed from the slab of mahogany. Opening the door, his eyebrow rose in confusion as he saw one of the royal guards bowing to him. "My apologies for the intrusion, Naruto-sama, but Her Highness Momo-sama has requested that you join her for lunch in her suite." Alright then, I'll head right over. Thanks for the heads up," Naruto said with an awkward smile as the guard bowed again and left. I am never going to get used to that. For a boy who grew up ostracized and downgraded by almost all his peers, the sheer amount of respect and admiration the people of Omocha were showing him was overwhelming. Shutting and locking the door behind him, Naruto walked down the long hallway until he reached the princess's room, marked by the two men standing guard in front the door. Hey, Momo-chan wanted to. The guards immediately moved to the sides and the left one opened the door for him. See me? Sweat dropping slightly as he stepped past the two men, the whiskered boy's gaze swept across the room, which was identical to his group's, until they settled on Princess Momo. She was seated at the dining table wearing a more casual and less puffy version of her usual dress. Naruto-kun, I'm so glad you could make it, Momo said with a bright smile forming on her lips as soon as she saw him. Despite hearing that you were mostly recovered, I was worried that you'd be unable to come due to your injuries. No problem, Momo-chan, I've always healed fast. Besides, I may not be the sharpest kunai in the pouch, but it would be pretty stupid of me to ignore a princess's request, especially one as pretty as you. Naruto said innocently with a grin, missing the light blush that appeared on the princess's cheeks at his words. Fair enough, please have a seat, Momo said while gesturing to the open chair next to her. Actually, it was the only chair open as all the others sans the one she was sitting on were oddly missing. Of course, Naruto thought nothing of this as he happily plopped down next to the girl and started to marvel at the large spread before them. There were regular dishes like onigiri and tempura, local delicacies such as roasted truffles and turtle soup, and several desserts such as dango, crepe, and pocky. To top it all off, a simple but delectable-looking cake sat in the middle, made with white, yellow, and pink frosting. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I had the chefs bring up a little of everything, Momo told him, giggling a little as she saw the small trail of drool slowly dripping from his lips. Looks like I made the right choice. Snapping out of his little trance at the sound of her laugh, Naruto smiled sheepishly while quickly wiping his mouth. You could have just asked? But then it wouldn't have been a surprise, Momo said as she started serving herself. Oh, wait, surprise for who? Naruto asked with a tilted head. For you, silly, the princess said, giggling again at the cute baffled look on his face. You saved not only my country and my people, but my very life. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, so I had to thank you somehow. Well, I did, but it was because of me that you were in danger in the first place, and that your castle was destroyed, and a lot of your soldiers were killed. Naruto muttered sadly, guilt flowing through him as he thought of the good men and women who died during the assault on the castle. Before he could wallow in those dark thoughts for long, though, he was brought back to the present by Momo's hand cupping his cheek and turning his head to face her. That wasn't your fault, there was no way you could have known that would happen, she said while gently rubbing his whisker-like birthmarks with her thumb. Besides, if anyone is to blame, it would be my stupid stubborn ex-advisor for not letting me evacuate the castle when we had the chance. Yeah, but Naruto tried to argue only for the princess's hand to move over his lips. Even my bravest and most loyal guards fled in terror at the mere sight of that beast. Yet you faced him all by yourself while injured and exhausted without even an ounce of hesitation, just so that I could get to safety, Momo continued. Never in my life have I ever seen such courage and selflessness. Naruto flushed slightly from all the praise he was getting, and at the same time Artemis groaned. Oh chaos, I know where this is going. What are you talking about, Artene? Where is this going? Naruto asked the goddess in confusion, only to get no response other than unintelligible grumbles before he returned his attention back to the princess. So please accept this meal, it is the least I could do to repay you for everything you've done, Momo said while placing a filled plate in front of him. Not knowing what else to say, Naruto nodded in defeated acceptance and picked up his chopsticks. Itadakimasu, he said while grabbing a piece of onigiri and popping it into his mouth, the princess doing the same only with some sushi. So how are your people doing? He asked after a few minutes of somewhat awkward silence. Good, there were thankfully very few casualties and those who've lost their houses are being taken in by neighbors or inns until we can rebuild their homes. That's good, any idea what you're going to do about Bowser's body? Yes, actually, Momo said while pouring herself a cup of tea. Once the last of the flesh is cleared off, its bones are going to be turned into Kinoko's newest tourist attraction. I'm hoping that it'll help make up the income lost. During Bowser's rampage, the mutated turtle had destroyed almost a third of the surrounding farmland, and with it thousands of Rio worth of produce. On the plus side, the turtle population was back to manageable levels. Sounds like a good idea, Naruto said as he sipped at a bowl of his second favorite food, red bean soup. I thought so as well when the merchants' representatives pitched the idea to me earlier today. Speaking of which, the princess hesitated for a moment before continuing. I'm sorry if this upsets you, but they wanted me to ask if you'd allow to let them have your bow. What? Soup went flying all over the table as Naruto did a spit take of epic proportions. Cringing a little at his reaction, Momo quickly explained further. They were hoping that since the bow was broken, that you'd be willing to part with it. That way they would have both the body of the beast and the weapon that killed it to show off in the exhibit once it's set up. Hearing this, Naruto calmed down as he got what she was saying. They wanted the full set as it were. Hell, now that he thought about it, he wouldn't be surprised if they tried scrounging up the arrows that no doubt littered the interior of the destroyed castle still. I'll think about it, Momoheim. Of course, take all the time you need, Momo said, patting his shoulder comfortingly before turning back to the food and grabbed a bread knife. Now enough of this seriousness, how about we dig into this cake finally? Glad for the change in topic, Naruto nodded his head as the princess cut the cake and placed a slice on each of their now empty plates. You know, this'll be the first time I've ever had cake. Really? Why's that? Momo asked curiously. Never really had the urge to try it, to be honest, Naruto said with a shrug. While he did like sweet foods, again red bean soup being his second favorite, he didn't really have that big of a sweet tooth. Well, that, and he personally felt that any money not spent on ramen was money wasted. Well then, I guess that means you can honestly say that the first cake you ever had was personally made for you by a princess, Princess said, once again breaking into giggles as she saw the dumbfounded look on his face. You made this yourself? Naruto asked, his gaze switching from her to the cake and back again several times. Yep, baking has always been a hobby of mine, something I picked up from my mother before she and father passed, Momo said with a sad, nostalgic smile. I'm sorry for your loss, Naruto said, setting a hand on her shoulder in what he hoped was a comforting way. If you don't mind me asking, what happened to them? They died during an Ebola outbreak 3 years ago. One of our ambassadors contracted it from a brothel in Kaminari no Kuni, Land of Lightning, and ended up spreading it to several others, including the king and queen when he came back with his reports. The princess told him, sniffling a little as she subtly scooched closer to her fellow blonde and leaned against his shoulder. Before you ask, I can't officially become queen until either my 16th birthday or I marry. Nodding in understanding as that was something he'd been curious about, Naruto decided not to delve into it any further and focused back on his plate. Setting his chopsticks down, he picked up a fork slightly awkwardly, not used to using such a utensil, and lightly stabbed it into his slice of cake. Pulling it back out laden with a moderate-sized chunk of the dessert, he took a brief moment to enjoy the soft vanilla scent it had popped it into his mouth. As the delightful amount of sweetness hit his tongue, his lips curled into a smile as he chewed. Wow, this is delicious, he said once he swallowed, quickly scooping up another bite and shoving in his mouth. You are a really great cook, Momo-chan. Thank you, that means a lot coming from you, the princess said, taking a few bites of her own piece as she got closer. I spoke with your sensei earlier today, and he said you'll be leaving tomorrow. Naruto started to talk with his mouth full, which naturally ended up with nothing but garbled mess coming out until he caught himself. Swallowing the cake in his mouth, he coughed slightly from a chunk that went down the wrong pipe before talking again. Yeah, he said our mission was to help deal with your country's turtle problem, and since that's done we have to head back as soon as we're able. He told me the same thing. Such a shame, I was hoping you all would be able to stay longer. I've really been enjoying your company. Momo sighed as she scooted even closer. Well, you could always request another mission, Naruto said jokingly with a chuckle, missing the serious consideration that passed the princess's face. And it's not like we're saying goodbye forever, We'll definitely see each other again, and until then we could always write. That is true, but there's no telling how long that would be, and there are things that can't be put into a letter, Momo said, a blush forming on her cheeks as her chair lightly bumping into his. Really like why Naruto was cut off when a pair of soft, supple lips pressed against his own. His face turned bright red as he was enraptured by the lovely baby blue eyes that stared into his own silver-flecked cerulean. Frozen in place like a deer caught in the headlights, he could nothing but sit there as the princess's slender arms wrapped around his waist and pulled him deeper into the kiss. It was a good thing he was sitting already, as his legs turned to jelly and his heart felt like it was going to explode in his chest from how rapidly it was pounding, with it only getting worse as he felt something start softly prodding his lower lip. Finally, after what felt like hours, Momo broke the lip lock and whispered into his ear. Since we may not see each other for so long, how would you like to be my little prince for the next few hours? If at all possible, Naruto's face became even redder and steam started rising from his ears. Oh my Kami! Oh my Kami! Ardine! What do I do? What do I do? Ardine? Beep, I'm sorry. The number you are trying to reach has been disconnected or no longer exists. Please check again to make sure you have dialed the correct number, or try again later. Snapping back to reality with a small yelp as he felt something settle on his lap, he looked up slowly to see the princess looking down at him with a smirk as she leaned in close again. I'll take that as a yes. 6 hours later. Where the heck is that baka? Ino demanded in worried frustration as she paced back and forth in her team's suite. After a long day of helping clear rubble, finding still missing villagers, and other such things, the three members had decided to call it a night, only to find Naruto missing. Relax, Ino, I'm sure Naruto's fine, Ino. He probably just got tired of being cooped up and went to stretch his legs. Asuma tried to reassure his student as he sat at the table with Choji. Tisho was on the table in between them, still on her pillow watching the gossip queen curiously. It's been almost 2 hours. And? This is Naruto we're talking about. Ino opened her mouth to keep arguing, only to pause when she couldn't come up with anything. After a few moments of this, she huffed in annoyance, and was starting to pace again when the doorknob suddenly jiggled. Everyone's attention snapped to the door as it opened, and eyebrows rose as a disheveled Naruto walked into the room. His hair was messier than normal, his jacket was open enough for them to see the slightly askew and sweat-soaked bandages underneath, and there were light pink smear marks all over his lips, cheeks, and neck. While the younger ones in the room looked at the boy with shock and confusion, Asuma had a small grin and was barely holding back the laughter that was threatening to burst out. He'd seen enough shinobi come back from their first seduction missions to figure out exactly what happened. Naruto, are you alright? Ino asked, her previous aggravation forgotten at the sight of her fellow blonde's state. The cake is a lie, he muttered dazedly, a glazed look in his eyes as he absent-mindedly brushed past the girl and headed for his room, not noticing as the contact caused something to fall out of his hair and clatter against the ground. Ino did, however, and was quick to bend over and grab the item. What the hell? She asked herself as she held up a familiar, teacup-sized crown for the others to see. Isn't this the princess's? What's it doing in Naruto's hair? The ponytailed girl's eyes widened as her gossip-wired brain finally put the pieces together. Oh my thump. I was wondering how long it would take her to figure it out, Asuma said with an amused chuckle, one that grew into the laughter he'd been restraining when Choji continued to look at him with confusion. Chapter 12. Last time. The cake is a lie, he muttered dazedly, a glazed look in his eyes as he absent-mindedly brushed past the girl and headed for his room, not noticing as the contact caused something to fall out of his hair and clatter against the ground. Ino did, however, and was quick to bend over and grab the item. What the hell? She asked herself as she held up a familiar, teacup-sized crown for the others to see. Isn't this the princess's? What's it doing in Naruto's hair? The ponytailed girl's eyes widened as her gossip-wired brain finally put the pieces together. Oh my thump. I was wondering how long it would take her to figure it out, Asuma said with an amused chuckle, one that grew into the laughter he'd been restraining when Choji continued to look at him with confusion. And now. It was a lovely summer day, with warm sunlight shining down from an almost cloudless sky and through the forest canopy. A gentle breeze flowing past carrying the sweet scents of the plant life in bloom. All around, a plethora of various chirps, squeaks, and other such noises sounded out, creating a somewhat chaotic yet soothing atmosphere. Come on, Naruto, you gotta tell me what happened. And one Naruto Uzumaki couldn't enjoy it one bit as he, his team, and Team 9 walked through the forested terrain of Hino Kuni, thanks to the unending badgering of his fellow blonde. It had been 4 days since his lunch with Princess Momo, and Ino had been absolutely relentless on trying to get all the juicy details out of the whiskered boy. Well, that and how he'd been able to fully recover from 20 deep lacerations, 11 broken bones, and almost a fourth of his body getting burned to a crisp in only a few days. Looking over Naruto as he walked, it was practically impossible to tell that he had actually been injured in the first place. He didn't have any scars, scratches, or even a bruise left over, and he was back in his usual attire thanks to the princess having it repaired for him. The only real differences were Tisho, who was sitting on Naruto's left shoulder quietly humming as she looked around curiously, with the princess's crown atop her head oddly enough, an empty space on his right where his bow would be slung. 4 days ago, outskirts of Omocha. Momo and Naruto stood before each other with somber expressions that were contradicted by the heavy blushes on their cheeks. A thick tension filled the air between them, with the only one not affected being Tisho, who was curled up in Naruto's hair teething on a piece of jerky. Well, I guess this is farewell for now, the princess said with a sad smile, her eyes glancing towards where the rest of Team 9 and Team 10 were standing not far away. Yeah, Naruto said while rubbing the back of his head, unsure of what else to say. Then I wish you luck on your travels and pray that we will cross paths again soon, my prince. Momo said, whispering the last part in Naruto's ear, causing him to sputter slightly as his already red cheeks practically started glowing. Ahem, same here, the whiskered boy muttered quietly as his fellow blonde giggled softly at his embarrassment. However, her humor was cut short as Naruto suddenly started digging around in his pockets before pulling out his gear scroll. Unrolling it partially to reveal a basic storage seal, he channeled some chakra into it, and his bow puffed into the air with a small cloud of smoke. Catching it by the grip with practiced ease, Naruto looked over the now useless weapon with a torn expression before holding it out towards Momo, his arm shaking lightly. Realizing what he was doing, the princess's eyes widened slightly as she tentatively reached out with both hands and grasped the bow on either side of the boy's own. You would truly give this away? Even though it clearly means so much to you? She asked, her voice filled with surprise. I thought about your request hard, and as much as I don't like it, this can do more good here with you than with me, Naruto said, his voice cracking ever so slightly as he pushed the bow further into her arms. Just promise me that you'll take good care of Daipo, first step for me, he asked, finally giving his weapon the name it deserved as he reluctantly let it go. Smiling softly, Momo hugged Daipo to her chest and gave a low bow. You have my word. Nodding in acceptance, Naruto smiled back while pocketing his scroll, before flinching as his fingers nudged into something sharp. His brows furrowing in confusion, the whiskered blonde grabbed onto the perpetrator and pulled it out to reveal the princess's miniature crown. The hell? How'd that get in there? He wondered aloud, either him or Momo noticing as Ino smirked at them in the background. Oh my, I was wondering where that went, Momo said in a pleasantly surprised tone. It must have gotten misplaced during our lunch together. Cough, yeah, that most likely. Naruto stuttered, his face reddening again, though not as bad as earlier. Here. Quickly changing the subject, he tried to hand the tiny crown back to its rightful owner, only to blink in surprise when the princess shook her head and stepped back. You've given me something of great value to yourself on my behest, she said, adjusting her grip on Daipo. Thus it is only fair that I give something up in return. Besides, that crown was always a bit too small for me, and I think you have someone that it would be just the right size for. As she spoke, her eyes drift upwards, getting Naruto to realize who she was talking about. Raising his free hand to the top of his head, the whiskered blonde gently nudged Tisho, causing her to hum in response, and slither onto his palm and curling her tail around his forearm. Bringing her down in front of him, the little Lamia looked at him curiously while continuing to gnaw on her jerky. Petting her gently, Naruto couldn't help but smile as Tisho hummed in delight, and even briefly let go of the dried meat held in her mouth in favor of hugging his fingers, before he set the crown atop her head. "What do you know, it's a perfect fit," Naruto said, chuckling as Tisho patted the side of the crown with one hand, then wiggled her head around a bit like she was trying to throw it off. After a minute or so though, she apparently decided that she either liked or didn't care about the new addition as she stopped and went back to her jerky. "Thank you, Momo-chan, I'll do my best to take care of it as well." "I'm sure you will," Momo said with a soft giggle, before frowning slightly as she glanced at the other ninja once again. "You should get going now. I do believe we've made your friends wait on us long enough." Turning to look at his team and Guy's team as well, Naruto saw what she meant as he could see the impatient look starting to form on most of their faces. "Yeah, you're right," setting Tisho back where she was and turning his head to face Momo with a sad smile. "Goodbye, Momo-chan. I'll see you again, I promise," he said before turning back and regrouping with the others. Momo watched as he talked with his sensei briefly, then almost immediately getting badgered by his female teammate as all 8 of them hopped into the forest canopy and began tree-hopping away. As she watched him leave, she raised a hand to her neck and pulled out a sun pendant that had been obscured by her dress. "Goodbye, Naruto-kun. May Amaterasu's blessings protect you on your journey and hasten our reunion," she murmured while rubbing her thumb over the front of the pendant, which had the worn-down image of a bird. Back to present. "Just tell her already. Her incessant begging is really starting to get on my nerves," Artemis said with a twitching brow. "Are you really still giving me the silent treatment? I'm sorry, but the number you are trying to reach has either been disconnected or doesn't dash." "Alright, I get it. You're still mad at me." "Of course I'm still mad. I needed your help and you ditched me. And I said I was sorry, Naruto, but I couldn't risk the possibility of indirectly breaking my vow of chastity. You could have warned me before it was too late. I panicked, alright. Besides, we both know that you enjoyed yourself. That's not the point, and you know it. Please, Naruto? Throw me a bone here," Naruto snapped out of his mental argument as Ino got in front of him and held her hands out pleadingly. "Ugh, I told you I don't want to talk about it, Ino, just drop it already," he said exasperatedly, tired of his teammates' constant pestering. She just wouldn't give up no matter how many times he turned her down, trying everything from begging to coercion to even outright attempts of bribery. "And lose the chance to find out how you managed to hook up with a freaking princess? Hell no! This is best gossip I've ever had the chance at hearing, even better than when I found out that you and Hinata were going on a date," Ino stated adamantly, and rather loudly as the rest of the group suddenly turned towards the arguing pair curiously and suspicion for one stoic Hyuga. Groaning in irritation, Naruto massaged his forehead as he felt a headache start to form. "Oh, for the love of Kami, for the last time, Hinata-chan and I didn't go on a date." "Really? So, you didn't go to the movies with her alone?" Ino asked, her voice shifting to a suggestive tone at the end. "Well, yeah, but that was just to celebrate graduating from the academy," Naruto said, his brow arcing when Ino moved to his side with a sigh and gave him a comforting hug. "Oh, you poor naive thing, there, don't worry, your good friend Ino will fix you. Just tell me what I want to know for a woe." Ino started to whisper in Naruto's ear, only to yell out in surprise when he shoved her away. Catching herself after a few feet, the ponytailed blonde huffed indignantly and shot the whiskered boy a dirty look. "I will get what I want, Naruto, it's only a matter of time. The only way that's going to happen is if you found a way to read my mind," Naruto said, missing the look of sudden realization that popped up on Ino's face. "Naruto, her clan can actually read minds, remember?" Artemis stated dully, causing Naruto to freeze. Slowly turning around, his face paled dramatically as he saw Ino holding her hands out in a familiar box shape with a victorious, and ever so slightly crazed, grin. ****OW. Thankfully, before the girl could finish the technique, Asuma decided to intervene and smack the clan heiress across the back of the head. "What the heck, sensei? Unless you want to explain to your parents why you've been court-martialed, I highly advise you not to try that stunt again," the normally relaxed man said sternly, causing Ino to gap at him in shock. WWA Article 45 of Konoha's Shinobi Code of Conduct. Any use of a jutsu on a fellow shinobi outside of an agreed-upon spar or without warranted cause is considered an act of treason and is punishable by demotion, forced retirement, imprisonment, or death depending on the severity of the crime. Niji stated matter-of-factly, not even blinking as he kept his eyes on Naruto. And let's not forget Naruto's already existing mental issues. I don't think I have to describe the possible complications that could arise from having an inexperienced mind walker such as yourself routing around inside his head," Asuma said, feeling bad internally as he saw his student lose almost all the color in her face but knowing it was for her own good. It was certainly better than her possibly running into the Kyuubi's cage by accident, and then having to explain to the head of the Yamanaka clan why his daughter was brain-dead, or irreversibly mentally damaged/traumatized. "She got it, sensei. It won't happen again," Ino said with a slight stutter, her hands instinctively raising up in a placating manner as she stepped back from Naruto. "Good," Asuma said with nod, giving the girl a comforting pat on the shoulder before looking ahead where the front gates of Konoha were just starting to come into view. "Now come on, I'm sure you must be looking forwards to telling your friends and family about how our mission went." While it was an obvious attempt at changing the subject, it was one the girl gladly took as she grinned weakly and started walking again. "Yeah, I can't wait to rub it in Forehead's face that I helped save an entire country." As she spoke, Ino quickly started to perk up. "Heck, I bet it'll even impress Sasuke-kun enough that he'll finally agree to go out on date with me. Then he'll see how great I am and want to go out on more dates, getting closer and closer. I'm beginning to think that girl's bipolar," Artemis muttered with a raised brow as she watched through Naruto as Ino's mood quickly improved and she began to walk faster. "I don't even know what that means, but I'm pretty sure I agree." Naruto thought in agreement, briefly forgetting his irritation towards the moon goddess as he and the rest of the ninja got moving again. "Don't get too excited just yet, we still have to report to the Hokage first," Tenten said as they arrived and their senseis checked in with the Eternal Gate guards Izumo and Kotetsu. "Ah man, I forgot about that." Ino groaned with a pout, hunching forward a bit and dropping her shoulders like the mere thought of their soon-to-be debriefing was tiring her out. "That's gonna take forever." "Sorry, Ino, but that's just how it is," Asuma said after he and Guy finished talking with the guards and the gate opened up, chuckling loudly as his student Simple grumbled in response. Nothing else was said as they entered Konoha and headed towards the Hokage Tower to officially end their mission. Naturally, though, their group ended up getting quite a large amount of attention drawn to them as they went by thanks to Naruto's passenger. Several ninja and civilians alike halted in the street in order to stare at Tisho, some being of shock, others of curiosity. More than a few eyed her with suspicion and disgust, muttering harsh insults under their breath, though just as many people, mostly girls and young women, would get one look at her and start ranting about how kawaii and moe she was. After a little while, though, Tisho started to get bothered by all the attention and she slithered into Naruto's puffy collar until everything except her eyes and crown were out of sight, the latter of which Naruto took off and put into his pocket since it kept poking his neck and chin. Not long after that, they arrived at the Hokage Tower, went inside, up a few flights of stairs, past the secretary, and finally arrived at the door to the Hokage's office. And just like he always did, Naruto burst right through said door with a big grin on his lips and a yell of, "Hey Gigi, did you miss me?" as soon as he saw Hiruzen at his desk. However, his good mood swiftly puttered out when the elderly leader didn't smile back, opting to instead give the whiskered blonde a resigned look of tiredness and sadness. "Hello Naruto-kun, I'm glad to see you're alright." "What's up Gigi? I thought that you'd be excited to see me," Naruto said, his head tilting to the side in confusion. However, before Hiruzen could respond, the rest of the group filed into the office and stood before the man. "Teams 9 and 10 reporting from mission debriefing, sir?" Asuma had started to say in a stiff tone, only to pause at the end with a raised brow when he also noticed the old man's attitude. "Hello Asuma-san, I'm sure there is a lot you have to tell me if your messages have been as accurate as they appeared to be," Hiruzen's gaze flickered towards the small amber eyes peeking out at him from Naruto's collar. But sadly, there's a more pressing matter that must be discussed first. Gai-san, could you and your team please step outside for a moment? Gigi? What's going on? Naruto said / asked worriedly as Guy gave a quiet salute and led Tenten, Niji, and Lee out of the office. Waiting until Team 9 was completely out of the office, Hiruzen sighed heavily before intertwining his fingers and resting his chin on them. I'm sorry to have to tell you all this, but given your closeness to them, I figured it'd be best to inform you right away. Inform us of what? Closeness to who? Ino asked worriedly, her inner gossip radar screaming at her that something bad had happened. There was an incident with Team 7. It was right. Chapter 13. Last time. Waiting until Team 9 was completely out of the office, Hiruzen sighed heavily before intertwining his fingers and resting his chin on them. I'm sorry to have to tell you all this, but given your closeness to them, I figured it'd be best to inform you right away. Inform us of what? Closeness to who? Ino asked worriedly, her inner gossip radar screaming at her that something bad had happened. There was an incident with Team 7. It was right. And now, Konoha Hospital, insert somber music. Beep, beep, beep. Ino felt nothing but sadness and pity wash over her like a tsunami as she looked down at the hospital bed before her, or more specifically the pink head on it. Sakura, her once best friend turned love rival, lay completely unmoving as she stared upwards at nothing. Her skin was a sickly gray color instead of its usual soft peach, and she was even thinner than the last time Ino had seen her. If it wasn't for the fact the heart monitor was still beeping and her chest was moving slowly, it would be impossible to tell her apart from a corpse. On the other side of the bed, Sakura's mother, a tired-looking dark blonde woman named Mabuki, kept saying how everything would be okay while rubbing the girl's arm comfortingly. Or at least what was left of her arm. Where Sakura's arms used to be, there was now just a pair of useless bandaged stumps, with one gone all the way to the shoulder, and the other ending 2 or 3 inches above where her elbow once was. According to the Hokage, the man that had hired Team 7, an old bridge builder named Tazuna from Nami no Kuni, to escort him home had lied about the difficulty of the mission because he had been unable to afford a higher rank thanks to a corrupt businessman named Gato ruining his country's economy by monopolizing the shipping industry of the island nation. Tazuna had been attempting to break said monopoly by building a bridge to connect Nami to the mainland, which resulted in Gato putting a hit out on the old man. Team 7 discovered this shortly after leaving when they were attacked by a pair of C-rank missing nin from Kirigakure known as the Demon Brothers. However, after making short work of the two ninjas, the team made the decision of continuing the mission anyway. This ended up being a horrible mistake as only a day later when they were almost at Tazuna's home they were attacked by Zabuza Momochi, an A-rank missing nin also from Kiri known as the Demon of the Hidden Mist and a former member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. After a very close fight, in which Team 7 only just managed to win by the skin of their teeth, a fake hunter nin from Kiri appeared just as the team leader Kakashi was about to finish Zabuza off and killed the rogue ninja. Unfortunately, as the masked hunter was collecting the dead body, Shikamura called him out as a phony. That's when everything ended up going from bad to complete shit as the fake hunter reacted aggressively. Using Zabuza's weapon, a massive 7-foot-long cleaver-like sword, and Saban, small metal needles, the young hunter easily decimated the tired team before fleeing. Thankfully nobody had died, but the injuries all 4 of them had received were no joke. Sasuke had been stabbed in both eyes by a pair of Saban just after he managed to unlock his Sharingan. Kakashi received a deep cut to the chest that narrowly missed anything vital. Shikamura had gotten temporarily paralyzed by several Saban to his spine while trying to attack from a distance, and Sakura's arms had been chopped off. She'd reflexively tried to block a sword swipe. It was only thanks to a combination of Tazuna's daughter, a lovely young woman named Tsunami, having enough medical knowledge to bandage her wounds once the old man managed to drag the quartet the rest of the way to his place, and the injuries somehow having frostbite that Sakura didn't bleed out within the hour. 2.5 days later a rescue team consisting of Tsunade, Shizen, and half a dozen ANBU arrived in response to the SOS message Kakashi sent to Konoha via summon. Sadly, While the two medic nin were able to treat everyone's injuries, they were unable to reattach Sakura's arms thanks to the aforementioned frostbite, which caused a bad case of gangrene, resulting in even more of the Pinkette's arms needing removed and the severed arms rotting due to the inability to properly preserve them. Once the four were stabilized and the ANBU had taken care of both Gato and his mercenary force, because fuck Gato, and finished an unsuccessful search for Zabuza and the fake hunter nin, they returned to Konoha. Tazuna had been arrested briefly for falsifying a mission request that led to Team 7's state, but the charges were dropped since Kakashi admitted to discovering the lie earlier and still proceeding with the mission. Well, that plus the daimyo of Nami agreed to let Konoha keep 4/5 of the money and valuables collected from Gato's mansion, which totaled over 18 million ryo, $1,800,000, and that Hai no Kuni get 5% off all trade costs once the bridge was finished. Ino snapped out of her thoughts as she stepped back slightly so Mabuki could walk past her, having to get back to her duties as a kunoichi of Konoha. Once she was gone, the blonde took the now vacant seat by the bed and put up the most supportive smile she could. "Hey forehead." "Ino pig," Sakura replied sourly, her voice slightly raspy from lack of use. "What do you want? Gonna gloat that you'll get Sasuke-kun for sure now?" "What?" "No, of course not," Ino stated with an offended look. She may be competitive about her crush on the last Uchiha, but doing something like that would be outright cruel. "I wanted to see how you were doing. The Hokage told me what happened when my team got back and I was worried." "Sorry, Ino, I'm just in a bad mood," the Pinkette apologized. "Don't worry about it, I'd probably be a bit snippy too if I was in your shoes," the gossip queen said with a wave of her hand before resting it on Sakura's shoulder. "But seriously, how are you holding up?" "Horribly," Sakura admitted with a depressed sigh, her voice cracking slightly as a single tear ran down her cheek. "I messed up, Ino, I messed up so badly." "Oh come on Sakura, this isn't your fault," Ino said supportingly, only for the Pinkette to shake her head. "Yes it is, I didn't listen to you about those stupid diets, and because of that I was completely useless. I could barely keep up with the others when we were walking, and nothing more than a hindrance to my team when we got attacked," Sakura said as more tears started to fall from her eyes. "I should never have become a ninja." Hey, stop thinking like that," Ino said while clapping her hands together loudly, snapping the girl out of her thoughts. "Yes, you should have listened to me about the dieting, but do you really think that would have really made a difference now? Those guys were able to beat both your sensei and Sasuke-kun, so they were clearly out of our league." "Yeah, but..." "No buts." Ino cut Sakura off with a firm look that softened after a few seconds. "You were put in an unexpectedly bad situation that you weren't ready for, it happens. Trust me, I know, you wouldn't believe most of the weird crap that happened on my mission." "Really, like what?" Sakura asked curiously, hoping to change the subject, which Ino gladly did. "Stop music. Where do I even start? My team got stuck with a crazy man with the worst fashion sense I've ever seen, and I mean the worst." Ino paused briefly to shiver as she thought about Guy and Lee's spandex outfits, and his team, and we were attacked by a giant lava-spitting turtle that Naruto somehow managed to kill. Speaking of, and you will not believe this part, somehow that knucklehead managed to hook up with a freaking princess, and he ended up adopting this foot-tall snake girl he found in a cave. "Seriously?" Sakura asked dully while giving Ino a disbelieving look. "I get you're trying to cheer me up and all, but you could at least make it sound somewhat realistic." "I told you it was hard to believe, hell I went through it, and I still have trouble believing it." Ino smirked as she reached into her weapons pouch and pulled out a photograph that she held out for Sakura to see. "That's why I brought proof." On it was an image of Bowser's skull with Naruto and Momo standing on top of it, Ino, Choji, and Asuma standing by the left side, and Team 9 on the right. Naruto had a sheepish grin and a heavy blush on his face as the princess gave him a kiss on his whiskered cheek, while Tisho sat atop his head with her usual curious expression. As she took in the picture, Sakura's eyes threatened to pop out of her skull and her mouth hung wide open, only snapping back to reality when Ino put the picture away. "Holy shit." "I know, right," Ino said with a chuckle at the armless girl's not-so-quiet exclamation before explaining the whole story as best she could. With each word that left her mouth, Sakura's flabbergasted expression grew more and more, especially once the platinum blonde talked about Naruto's night with Princess Momo. The princess actually had sex with Naruto Baka? She demanded. Went the whole 9 yards from what I can tell, Ino said with a nod. Guess I can't really blame her though, he did save her life repeatedly. But this is Naruto we're talking about. Why would anyone want to sleep with him? Sakura asked rhetorically as she pretended to gag a little. Couldn't she have just given him a medal or something instead? You know, he's actually not that bad once you get to know him, Ino said with a small frown. What? The blonde asked with a raised brow as Sakura stared at her with a baffled expression. Did you just defend Naruto? Sakura asked back incredulously. So what if I did? He is my teammate, Ino said with a shrug. But you hate him as much as I do, Sakura stated. What the hell do you mean hate him? Ino asked, her head tilted in confusion. I mean, I disliked Naruto a lot when we were in the academy, yeah, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that I hated him. And that was true, other than finding Naruto's overexuberance and classroom antics irritating and childish, she really didn't have much of an issue or interaction with him until after they were put on a team. But he's so loud, rude, stupid, and annoying because he wasn't raised right. He doesn't have a mother or father, no one to teach him right from wrong, Sakura said while rolling her eyes, missing the look of shock and disgust that appeared on Ino's face as she continued. I mean, think about it, he just does whatever comes to mind. If I did things like Naruto, then forget it. My parents would get so mad at me and I'd get in trouble, so I don't do it. But if you don't have parents to tell you, then how would you know? She asked rhetorically. He's selfish and bratty, he gets to do whatever he wants whenever he wants, he was completely alone. Ino cut in, causing Sakura to pause in surprise as she turned her head back towards Ino to say something, only to end up cowering under the withering glare the blonde was sending towards her. Do you realize how horrible you just sounded, Sakura? What do you mean? The injured Pinkette asked with a stutter, shivering slightly from the anger Ino was directing at her. What do I mean? What do I mean? Ino repeated in outrage, before pausing briefly to take a few deep breaths to calm down, though her glare intensified threefold. Do you honestly not know, or are you just playing dumb? No, what? I have no idea why you're getting at, Sakura said shakily, unnerved by Ino's sudden change of mood. Wow, just wow, Ino muttered in disappointment with a shake of her head and a sigh. It really never occurred to you that being an orphan isn't all daisies and rainbows? Did it never reach your big brain that maybe not having parents wouldn't be as fun as you think? Sakura started to say something, but Ino cut her off once again by raising her hand. Sure, we wouldn't have to worry about being punished for doing stupid things or have to follow a bunch of dumb rules like going to bed at 7:30, but we'd also lose so much. Can you imagine coming home every single day to an empty house, no one there to ask you how school went or support you after a hard day? Ino asked, causing the crippled Pinkette to freeze as her brain started conjuring up images of such a situation. How about not having your mother around to tell you that she loved you, or your dad to tell you it was alright after you woke up from a nightmare? Doesn't that just sound fan-fucking-tastic? Well, when you put it like that, that sounds pretty horrible, Sakura muttered while staring at her blanket, unable to meet Ino's gaze. No kidding, imagine how I felt when I found out while visiting his apartment, Ino said /thought, her mind drifting back to that awkward day. Flashback, 1 week after Genin test. I can't believe I agreed to this, Ino thought with a dull look as she walked down the hall of an apartment building, a gardening bag hanging from shoulder filled with a few potted flowers, sprouts, and garden tools. Me and my stupid curiosity. The day before, Naruto had come by her family shop to buy a few different plants, something he did all the time, especially in the last year. However, unlike every other time, Ino had actually talked to her fellow blonde as he shopped, deciding she might as well get to know her new teammate better. Alright, fine, she was hoping to get some more details on his date with Hinata. Her love of gossip was a hard thing to quell, sue her. However, since just jumping into that hadn't gotten her anywhere, the ponytailed blonde had decided to take a subtler approach and started by asking about his constant shopping. As they talked though, Ino had found herself getting increasingly curious about this garden that Naruto kept talking about, and before she even realized what happened she'd ended up agreeing to come by and help him with it. And so here she was, walking up to the door of Naruto's place to hang out with the blonde for a good portion of the day, something she'd never thought she'd be doing. Well, might as well get this over with, Ino thought while knocking loudly. It's open, Ino! Naruto's voice called out slightly muffled, causing Ino to blink in surprise before opening the door to find Naruto and Artemis sitting at a table eating cups of instant ramen. How did you know it was me? She asked while looking around the apartment, her already raised brow vanishing into her hairline at how small it was. You told us you were coming by today, the moon goddess stated after gulping down a mouthful of noodles. Right, my bad, Ino said with a sheepish smile. So where is this garden you keep talking about? It's up on the roof, here I'll show, gurgle hold that thought. Naruto cut himself off before booking it to the bathroom as his stomach grumbled loudly. You might as well sit down, this is gonna be a while, Artemis said dryly, not even blinking as she was dragged back a few feet by the chain sticking out of her neck. Alright then, Ino said, setting her bag on the table but remained standing. A long silence fell over the room after that, only broken by the occasional groan of agony from Naruto and the soft slurping from Artemis. Seeing that the goddess was content with the silence, Ino returned her attention to the apartment itself. Geez, this place is so plain. The walls were bare and painted a plain cream color, and the only furniture beside the table and chairs was an old recliner set in front of an old dinged-up TV, a couple of potted plants, a cupboard, and a small shelf a few feet to her left that held several knickknacks, a few movies, and a trio of framed photos. Her curiosity getting the better of her once more, the gossip queen walked over and picked up the middle picture. On it was a picture of a 4-year-old Naruto smiling brightly as he sat on the Hokage's lap, the old man's hat sitting lopsidedly on the little blonde's head. Ino couldn't help but giggle at the cute scene before setting the photo down and grabbing the one on the left. This one was more recent, showing the whiskered blonde with a single auburn streak in his hair wearing a formal kimono with a slightly uncomfortable yet victorious smile as he held up a bag full of goldfish while Shizen stood behind him ruffling his hair. He knows the apprentice of the slug Sannin? Ino thought with a shocked expression, easily recognizing the raven-haired woman. The metaphoric grapevine had practically exploded when Tsunade and Shizen had returned to Konoha, so of course she knew all about them. Shaking off her shock, the ponytailed blonde put the picture back and lifted up the last one. This one she recognized immediately. How could she not? It was the group photo her team took right after passing the Genin test. She stood in the middle with a smirk on her lips. Naruto was on her right with his trademark foxy grin, Choji to her left eating a bag of barbecue chips, and Asuma stood in the back lazily smoking a cigarette. Smiling a bit as she set the picture back in its place, Ino suddenly frowned as she realized something. Why aren't there any pictures of Naruto with his parents? She wondered while looking around the apartment again, confirming that there were no other pictures to be seen. In fact, there's nothing suggesting anyone but him lives here. Ino was nothing if attentive to detail. She had to be as a kunoichi and head gossiper of her age, and what she saw confused her. The cupboard in the kitchenette was open, allowing her to see the solitary bowl and plate amongst the food. There was only one bedroom, which after taking a quick peek inside revealed a single bed and a futon, the latter of which she knew was only recently added since she'd helped Naruto buy it for Artemis. Seriously, it's like he lives here, all by himself. By Kami, I'm an idiot, Ino thought with a facepalm as all the pieces finally clicked together in her mind. All the memories she had of the whiskered blonde played through her mind, his childish attitude, his lack of manners, his over-boisterousness. He's an orphan. How did I not know that? It makes so much sense when I think about it now, Ino thought as she went over everything she knew about Naruto, with each fact practically screaming at her for missing something so obvious. However, when she got to her more recent learnings of the energetic boy, she stiffened up like a board as one key detail jumped out at her. Her eyes slowly drifted over to Artemis, who was still casually enjoying her food with a content look. He must have been so lonely, she thought with a pitying look. An orphan boy who lives alone, just happening to have a second personality that he saw as an older sister, yet it didn't take a genius to see the correlation there. Before she could delve deeper into such thoughts though, Ino was snapped back to the present as the bathroom door opened up and Naruto walked out with a relieved sigh. Oh man, that was rough. Well, maybe next time you'll listen to me when I say the milk is expired, Artemis said. An amused smirk crossed her lips as Naruto simply groaned in response. Now if you're done whining, I do believe you have a guest to entertain. Almost like a switch had been flipped, Naruto immediately perked up and turned towards Ino with a sheepish grin. Right. Sorry for making you wait like that, Ino. It's no problem, Naruto, just show me this garden of yours already, Ino said awkwardly while trying to shove her recent revelation to the back of her mind with little success as she picked her bag back up. Right, follow me. Flashback end. Ino shook her head with a sigh as she stood up and headed to the door. Forget it, I'm going home. It's been a long day and I need to get some sleep. See you later, Sakura, she said without looking back, leaving a still stunned Sakura alone to her thoughts. It's a good thing Naruto wasn't able to come with me like he wanted to. Kami only knows how he would have reacted if heard her say that, the blonde thought as she walked down the halls of the hospital. The energetic blonde had been forced to stay at the Hokage Tower because Hiruzen wanted Tisho to be looked over first by Tsunade and Konoha's resident snake expert. Speaking of which, Hokage's Tower, private medical bay. You are an adorable little thing, aren't you? One Anko Mitarashi, a purple-haired woman wearing an open long brown trench coat with mesh armor underneath, said as she held Tisho up to her face with one hand. The other was using a pair of tweezers to carefully hold the small Lamia's mouth open so she could see the small budding fangs and teeth inside. Ooh, and possibly quite deadly once you're a bit older, what fun. Putting the tweezers down, Anko moved the arm holding Tisho until it was perpendicular to her stomach before running her free hand along the tail constricting around her forearm, gently pinching it between her thumb and forefinger. Almost entirely muscle, ribs and vertebrae are stiffer than normal. Makes sense since most of the internals are in the upper body instead, and you wouldn't need to expand in order to consume food. A bit less flexible, pressing her thumb against Taisho's abdomen, Anko smirked as her arm audibly groaned and started turning purple until she stopped. But more than makes up for it with triple the gripping strength. So Taisho's alright? Naruto asked nervously from the other side of the room with Tsunade, Shizen, and Hiruzen beside him. Relax, Gaki, she's fine, the purplet said, pulling the Lamia off her arm and setting her down on the counter. Gonna need some braces to straighten her teeth as they grow, otherwise as far as I can tell she's a picture of health. Which is where we come in, Tsunade said before picking Naruto up by the scruff of his jacket. Have fun, Shizen. What the hell? Naruto yelled as he squirmed around in the medic's grasp. Put me down, Baka-ba-chan. No can do, Gaki, Tsunade stated with a wicked smirk as she walked over to a different exam room with her fellow blonde in tow. I heard you had a little fun with a girl on your mission. What's that G got to do with anything? Naruto demanded as his face reddened. Oh, you don't know? Tsunade asked in a mocking tone as Naruto glowered at her. Whenever a ninja has sex on a mission, they have to have a checkup immediately after they get back, to make sure they didn't catch anything, you see. Makes sense, Artemis said as Naruto stopped squirming as much. This is going to hurt a lot, isn't it? He asked as he was set down in an exam chair and Tsunade locked the door. Never losing her smirk, the busted blonde dug around inside a drawer and pulled out a syringe. I'd be lying if I said no. Outside the Hokage Tower. A pair of Chunin guards jumped slightly as a high-pitched girly scream filled the air. How sounds like some poor sap broke the golden rule, the one on the left said. Someone was dumb enough to take the last dango from the break room? Asked the right one. No, you dingus, never admit you had sex on a mission. Oh. Man, what a moron. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.